Commander Vex 9 of the Galactic Education Authority stood outside Classroom Delta 7, watching through the reinforced viewing panel as complete mayhem unfolded inside. His four eyes twitched in sequence, a nervous habit he developed since humans joined the galactic community 3 cycles ago. "By the 7 moons of Keth," he muttered, adjusting his ceremonial sash. "How did we end up with this situation?" Inside the classroom, 23 young beings from 12 different species sat in what could generously be called organized chaos. The Zenthari cubs, with their sleek silver fur and razor-sharp teeth, occupied the back corner like a pack of tiny wolves. The Morgani twins, their crystalline skin refracting light in dangerous patterns, sat perfectly still but somehow managed to look menacing. A group of Kelleran younglings, their tentacles writhing with barely contained energy, had formed what appeared to be a defensive huddle, and at the front of the room, completely oblivious to the tension, stood Luna Martinez. The human teacher, barely 5 feet tall with wild curly hair escaping from what had once been a neat bun, was enthusiastically explaining photosynthesis using hand gestures that would have looked threatening to any sane observer. Her species' notorious predator instincts were completely invisible to her, but every other being in that room could sense them humming beneath her cheerful exterior. "Now, who can tell me what happens when chlorophyll absorbs sunlight?" Luna asked brightly, turning to face the class with a smile that revealed her flat, grinding teeth. Vex 9 shuddered. Humans were the only species he knew that had evolved from persistence hunters and somehow convinced themselves they were harmless. The galaxy's most successful predators, and they spent their time teaching photosynthesis to children. His communication device buzzed. "Commander, this is Security Chief Grax. We're in position outside the classroom. Sensors indicate elevated stress hormones from all non-human students. Recommend immediate extraction of the predator cubs before the human notices their distress." Vex 9's primary eyes rolled while his secondary eyes remained fixed on the classroom. Grax was a Brutaxian, built like a walking tank with the tactical intelligence of overcooked vegetable matter. The idea of not letting the human notice anything was laughable. Humans noticed everything. It was part of what made them so terrifyingly effective. "Negative, Chief Grax. We observe only. The human teacher has full authority in her classroom according to the education treaties." "Sir, with respect, the treaties were written before anyone realized how the cubs would react to extended exposure to human predator pheromones. The Zenthari younglings are showing pack behavior. The Morgani twins haven't moved in 17 minutes, and the Kellegans are secreting defensive mucus." Vex 9 looked closer. Indeed, there were small puddles forming around the Kelleran huddle. This was not good. Inside the classroom, Luna was completely absorbed in her lesson, drawing an elaborate diagram on the holographic display. Her movements were fluid, economical, and utterly predatory, though she remained blissfully unaware of this fact. To her, she was simply teaching. To 23 young aliens, she was an apex hunter demonstrating her prowess. "Miss Martinez," squeaked Pip, one of the smaller Zenthari cubs. His voice was barely audible, but Luna's enhanced human hearing picked it up immediately. "Yes, Pip?" she asked, turning with that terrifying predator focus that humans used for everything from hunting mammoth to helping with homework. Pip's silver fur stood on end. Behind him, his pack siblings began to show submissive postures. "Could we maybe have a bathroom break?" Luna glanced at the chronometer. "We just had one 20 minutes ago. Are you feeling all right?" The concern in her voice sent ripples of panic through the non-human students. When a predator showed interest in your health, it usually meant one thing. Several of the Kelleran younglings began a low, humming distress call. "Oh, are you singing?" Luna asked with delight, turning toward the Kelleran huddle. "How wonderful. I love Kelleran harmonies." The humming intensified. 2 of the smaller Kellegans began producing enough defensive mucus to create actual slip hazards. Vex 9 activated his communicator. "Chief Grax, prepare for emergency classroom evacuation. But do it quietly. If the human realizes we're removing students because they're afraid of her, the diplomatic incident will set back human-alien relations by decades. Understood, sir. Moving in now. Through the viewing panel, Vex 9 watched as the classroom door slid open with barely a whisper. Grax himself entered first, his massive Brutaxian frame filling the doorway. He was followed by 4 security officers from different species, all trying to look casual and non-threatening. Luna looked up from her hologram with surprise. "Oh, hello there. Can I help you with something?" Grax cleared his throat, producing a sound like grinding stone. "Routine safety inspection, Teacher Martinez. Nothing to concern yourself with. We'll just be checking on the younglings." "Safety inspection during class time?" Luna's eyebrows rose. Those eyebrows, Vex 9 noted with growing dread, were currently exhibiting the micro-expressions that human psychology texts described as suspicious alertness. "Very routine," Grax insisted, moving toward the Zenthari cubs. "Just need to verify proper seating arrangements." The cubs immediately scrambled away from him, not because they feared the security chief, but because they feared being separated from their pack in the presence of a human predator. Their instincts screamed that isolation meant certain death. "Wait a minute," Luna said, and every being in the room froze. Her voice had dropped half an octave, taking on what humans called a teacher tone, but what sounded to alien ears like a predator claiming territory. "Are you trying to remove my students from my classroom?" Grax made the mistake of pausing. In that pause, Luna's enhanced pattern recognition, evolved from millions of years of tracking prey, analyzed the situation. Her students were displaying fear behaviors. Security was trying to remove them during class time. The only common factor was her own presence. "Oh," she said quietly, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I see what's happening here." Vex 9 pressed himself against the viewing panel. This was it. This was the moment when the diplomatic situation would explode into galactic headlines. Human teacher realizes aliens fear. Her predatory nature would be trending on the news feeds within hours. But instead of anger, instead of the aggressive dominance display that most species would have exhibited, Luna Martinez did something completely unexpected. She sat down, not in a chair. On the floor, cross-legged, hands folded in her lap, making herself smaller, less threatening. The human predator had voluntarily assumed a submissive posture. "Students," she said softly, "could everyone please come sit in a circle on the floor with me?" The response was immediate. The Zenthari cubs, no longer separated from their pack, began to relax. The Morgani twins' crystalline skin shifted from warning red to curious blue. The Kelleran younglings stopped producing defensive mucus. "Security Chief Grax," Luna continued without looking at him, "I appreciate your concern for my students' safety, but I think we can handle things from here. Would you mind giving us some space?" Grax looked helplessly at his superior through the viewing panel. Vex 9 made a subtle hand gesture that meant, "Retreat immediately before you make this worse." As the security team filed out, Luna began speaking again, her voice taking on the rhythmic, soothing cadence that human parents had used to calm frightened children for millennia. "I know that some of you have been feeling uncomfortable in class," she said, addressing the circle of young aliens now gathered around her. "And I want you to know that's okay. Sometimes, when different species interact, our instincts can make us feel scared or nervous, even when there's no real danger." Pip, the small Zenthari cub, raised a tentative paw. "Miss Martinez, are you going to eat us?" The question hung in the air like a toxic gas leak. Luna blinked. Once, twice. Then she began to laugh. It wasn't the polite laughter of diplomatic courtesy. It wasn't the nervous giggle of embarrassment. It was the deep, genuine belly laugh of a human who had just encountered something absurdly funny. And to 23 young aliens who had never heard a human laugh before, it was the most terrifying sound in the galaxy. Several of the Kelleran younglings immediately resumed defensive mucus production. The Morgani twins shifted back to warning red. The Zenthari cubs began what could only be described as whimpering. "Oh no, no, no," Luna said, immediately recognizing their renewed distress. Her laughter cut off abruptly. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have laughed. You were asking a serious question." She took a deep breath and seemed to center herself. When she spoke again, her voice was calm, steady, and somehow completely non-threatening despite belonging to a species that had conquered their entire planet through superior hunting techniques. "Pip, I am never, ever going to eat you, or any of you. Humans stopped eating other sapient beings approximately 50,000 years ago, and even then, we only ate our own species, and only in extreme survival situations. We certainly never ate other species." She paused, considering her words carefully. "I know that your instincts tell you I'm dangerous. And you know what? Your instincts are actually correct. Humans are dangerous. We're persistence hunters who evolved to chase down prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We have binocular vision for tracking, enhanced pattern recognition for following trails, and more endurance than almost any other species in the galaxy." The student stared at her with growing fascination. This was not the typical approach to interspecies relations. "But," Luna continued, "knowing that I'm dangerous and knowing that I'm going to hurt you are two completely different things. Just because I could hurt you doesn't mean I want to, and it certainly doesn't mean I will." She gestured to herself, still sitting cross-legged on the floor. "Right now, I'm demonstrating what humans call safe behavior. I've made myself physically smaller. I'm speaking in quiet tones. I'm keeping my hands visible and relaxed, and I'm maintaining non-aggressive body language. These are all signals that humans use to show we're not a threat." Mira, one of the Morgani twins, raised a crystalline hand. "But why do you want to teach us if you're a predator? Don't predators usually want to hunt prey, not educate them?" Luna smiled, and this time she was careful to keep her lips closed, hiding her teeth. "That's an excellent question, Mira. Humans are social predators. We hunt in groups, and we protect our groups. When we adopt someone into our group, our predator instincts actually work to keep them safe, not to harm them." She looked around the circle, making brief eye contact with each student. "I've adopted all of you into my group. You're my students, which makes you my responsibility. My predator instincts don't see you as prey anymore. They see you as pack members to protect and nurture." The effect was almost magical. 23 young aliens who had been living in a state of low-level terror for weeks suddenly understood that their predator teacher wasn't hunting them. She was protecting them. Outside in the hallway, Vex 9 found himself taking notes on his communication device. This human's approach to interspecies education was unlike anything in the official manuals, and it was working. "But what about the other humans?" asked Kex, one of the Kelleran younglings. "Are they protecting us too?" Luna's expression grew thoughtful. "That's complicated. Not all humans have adopted you into their groups yet. Some humans are still figuring out how to interact with other species. Some are scared of you, just like you've been scared of me. And some, unfortunately, still think like individual predators rather than pack protectors." She shifted position slightly, unconsciously placing herself between her students and the door. "But the humans who work in education, in medical care, in child services, in protection services, we've all chosen to expand our pack instincts to include other species. We've made a conscious decision to use our predator abilities to keep you safe, rather than to threaten you." The classroom had grown completely silent except for the soft hum of the air circulation system. 23 young beings hung on every word. "Now," Luna said, her voice taking on a slightly different tone, "I need to tell you something important. There are going to be people, both human and alien, who don't want this kind of interspecies cooperation to work. They're going to try to convince you that humans can't be trusted, that we're too dangerous, that you should be separated from us for your own safety." She paused, letting that sink in. What happened today? With security trying to remove you from class, that wasn't because you were in danger. That was because some adults are scared of what happens when humans and aliens learn to trust each other. They're scared of losing control. Vex 9 felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. This human teacher had identified the political undercurrents of the situation with frightening accuracy. "So what do we do?" asked Zara, the other Morgani twin. Luna's smile this time was different. It wasn't threatening, but it wasn't entirely peaceful either. It was the smile of a predator who had identified a threat to her pack. "We prove them wrong," she said simply. "We show them that humans and aliens can work together, learn together, and protect each other. We become so successful at cooperation that they can't ignore us." She stood up smoothly, her movements now clearly recognizable as those of a highly efficient hunter, but somehow no longer frightening. "And we start by finishing our lesson on photosynthesis. Because whether you're human, Zenthari, Morgani, or Kelloran, you all need to understand how plants convert sunlight into energy, if you're going to pass my class." The laughter that erupted from the students was genuine this time. Not the nervous giggling of frightened prey, but the delighted amusement of young beings who had just realized they were part of something special. Outside the viewing panel, Vex 9 closed his note-taking device and activated his communicator. "Security Chief Grax, please report to my office immediately. We need to discuss new protocols for classroom interactions. Sir, should I bring a disciplinary report?" Vex 9 watched as Luna Martinez began drawing another holographic diagram, surrounded by a circle of completely engaged alien students. "No, Chief. Bring a commendation form. And then bring me the files on every human teacher in our system. I think we've been approaching this entire situation backwards." As he walked away from the viewing panel, Vex 9 couldn't help but shake his head in amazement. Humans. The galaxy's most successful predators had somehow evolved into the galaxy's most effective protectors, and they were teaching photosynthesis to alien children. The universe, he reflected, had a truly twisted sense of humor. 3 days after what the Galactic Education Authority would later classify as the classroom incident, Director Thane Omega sat in her obsidian office, reviewing security footage for the 15th time. Her 6 arms moved in agitated patterns as she manipulated multiple data streams simultaneously. "This is unprecedented," she muttered to her aide, a nervous Quillarian whose feathers kept shifting from blue to purple with anxiety. "A human teacher successfully de-escalated interspecies panic using nothing but conversation and floor sitting." Assistant Director Krill tucked his wings closer to his body. "Director, the political ramifications are significant. The Separatist Council has already filed 3 formal complaints about predator species infiltration of educational systems." Thane Omega's laugh was bitter. "Of course they have. Heaven forbid we actually solve problems instead of perpetuating them." Meanwhile, in classroom Delta 7, Luna Martinez was discovering that word travels fast in a space station populated by telepathic gossips and species with enhanced hearing. Her morning class had somehow doubled in size, with young beings from species she'd never even heard of pressed against the viewing panels. "Miss Martinez," asked Jex, a Thalorian student whose butterfly-like wings were currently displaying excited orange patterns, "is it true that you made the Zenthari cubs stop being scared by explaining hunting techniques?" Luna paused in her preparation of the day's chemistry lesson. "Well, that's a simplified version of events, but essentially, yes. Sometimes understanding why we feel certain ways helps us manage those feelings better." The newest additions to her class, 3 young Valdorians with their distinctive spiral horns, whispered among themselves in their musical language. Luna's enhanced hearing caught fragments of their conversation. "Dangerous but safe," one was saying. "Pack protector, not lone hunter." She smiled to herself. The concepts were spreading faster than she'd anticipated. "Today," Luna announced to her expanded classroom, "we're going to learn about chemical bonds. But first, I want to try something different." She moved to the center of the room and sat down again, this time more deliberately. I want each of you to share something about your species' natural instincts or abilities that others might find frightening, but that you use for positive purposes. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Pip, the small Zenthari cub who had asked if she was going to eat them, raised his paw. Zenthari have pack-hunting instincts, he said quietly, but we use them to work together on projects and to make sure no one in our group gets left behind. Mira, the Morgani twin, spoke next. Our crystalline skin can produce blinding light flashes that would disorient prey, but we use it for art displays and emergency signaling. One by one, the students began sharing. The Kelleran defensive mucus turned out to have incredible adhesive properties useful for construction. The Valdorian horns, designed for territorial combat, resonated at frequencies that could heal certain injuries. Luna listened with growing excitement. This was exactly what the galaxy needed. Not just tolerance, but genuine understanding of how different species' survival traits could become collaborative strengths. Her enthusiasm was interrupted by the classroom door sliding open with more force than necessary. Security Chief Grax entered, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him marched Director Thane Omega herself, flanked by two beings Luna didn't recognize, both wearing the distinctive silver sashes of the Galactic Council. Teacher Martinez, Thane Omega said without preamble, you will cease this unauthorized assembly immediately and return to standard curriculum protocols. Luna stood slowly, her movement causing several students to shift nervously. Director Thane Omega, this is my regularly scheduled chemistry class. The students are here voluntarily. Your class roster shows 23 students, snapped one of the council representatives, a tall Nexarian with skin like polished metal. I count 37 beings in this room. Additional students seeking educational opportunities, Luna replied calmly. I was under the impression that learning was encouraged in educational facilities. The second council representative, a bulky Gromax with tusks that gleamed silver, stepped forward. The Separatist Council has filed formal complaints about predator species using pack bonding techniques to manipulate vulnerable young minds. Luna's expression didn't change, but every student in the room suddenly felt the temperature drop. Not literally, but something in her predator presence shifted from protective to dangerous. I see, she said, her voice carrying an edge that made Grax unconsciously step backward. And what exactly do you propose as an alternative? Immediate species segregation in educational settings, the Gromax announced. Human teachers will instruct only human students. Alien teachers will handle alien students. This eliminates the risk of predator-prey psychological manipulation. The classroom erupted, not in panic this time, but in outrage. 37 young voices rose in protest, creating a cacophony of clicks, chirps, howls, and musical tones that would have been overwhelming if not for one thing. Luna raised her hand. The silence was instantaneous and complete, not because she had made any threatening gesture, but because her students had learned to recognize that gesture as a signal for attention and respect. The council representatives stared in shock. A human predator had just demonstrated perfect classroom control over 36 alien students using nothing but a hand gesture. Thank you, Luna said calmly to her students. Then she turned to the council representatives with a smile that was definitely not friendly. Gentlemen, I appreciate your concern for student welfare. However, I have several questions about your proposed solution. She began pacing, her movements predatory but controlled, like a hunter circling prey. First, how exactly do you plan to provide quality education when you've just eliminated half of our teaching staff? Humans make up approximately 47% of qualified educators in this system. The Nexarian shifted uncomfortably. We will recruit additional alien teachers. Fascinating. And where, exactly, will you find Zenthari educators qualified to teach advanced chemistry, or Morgani specialists in xenobiology, or any of the dozens of other combinations you'll need? She paused in front of the Gromax. Second question, How do you plan to explain to the parents of these students that you're abandoning the most successful interspecies educational program in galactic history because you're afraid of their children learning to trust other species? The program is successful precisely because it's manipulative, the Gromax snarled. Humans are using predator bonding to create unnatural loyalty in alien youth. Luna's laugh was sharp and definitely not amused. Unnatural loyalty? Like the loyalty that convinced 37 young beings to stand up to Galactic Council representatives in defense of their education. That kind of unnatural loyalty? Behind her, the students were watching with rapt attention. This was better than any lesson on chemistry. This was a masterclass in how to dismantle bureaucratic stupidity. Third question, Luna continued relentlessly. Have you actually asked any students or parents what they think about your segregation plan? That's irrelevant, the Nexarian said stiffly. The Separatist Council represents the best interests of non-human species. Does it really? The voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a figure none of them had expected. Ambassador Keth Prime, the Zenthari representative to the Galactic Council, stepped into the classroom. Behind him came a parade of other beings, all wearing the formal robes of different species, educational committees. Because, Keth Prime continued, we've been reviewing the actual data from integrated classrooms, not the fear-mongering propaganda from the Separatist Council. He moved to stand beside Luna, an action that sent clear political signals to everyone present. Test scores in integrated classrooms are up 43%. Interspecies cooperation incidents have increased by 200%. Bullying and prejudice incidents have dropped to near zero. Ambassador Vel 7 of the Morgani Educational Authority stepped forward next. Our children are happier, more confident, and more prepared for life in a multi-species galaxy than they have ever been. This is highly irregular, the Gromax protested. This was supposed to be a simple disciplinary action. You're absolutely right, said Director Thane Omega, and Luna felt a moment of alarm. But then the director smiled, showing rows of needle-sharp teeth. It is highly irregular for the Galactic Council to attempt educational policy changes without consulting the species actually affected by those policies. She gestured to the assembled ambassadors. It's also highly irregular for a single complaint from a political faction to override documented evidence of educational success. The Nexarian drew himself up to his full height. The Separatist Council will not be ignored in this matter. You're absolutely correct, Luna said pleasantly. You won't be ignored. You'll be voted down. By whom? The Gromax demanded. By us, said 37 young voices in unison. Pip, the small Zenthari cub, stepped forward from the group of students. Ambassador Keth Prime, under Zenthari law. Cubs who have reached educational majority have the right to petition the council directly on matters affecting their education. Mira and Zara, the Morgani twins, moved to flank him. Under Morgani law, students have the right to choose their educational path free from political interference. One by one, students from different species began citing legal precedents and constitutional rights that Luna was fairly certain they hadn't known about before this moment. How do they know all this? Whispered Director Thane Omega to Ambassador Keth Prime. Human teachers, he replied with what might have been amusement, apparently believe in teaching practical civics alongside chemistry. The Gromax was beginning to look desperate. This is preposterous. Children cannot overrule council authority. Actually, said a new voice from the doorway, they can. Everyone turned to see Captain Sarah Webb, the human liaison to the Galactic Council, entering with a datapad and a decidedly predatory smile. According to the Educational Freedom Act of 2038, students have the right to petition for continuation of any educational program that demonstrates measurable success. The petition must be supported by academic data, parental consent, and species governmental approval. She held up the datapad. I have academic data showing unprecedented success rates, I have signed parental consent forms from every family with children in integrated programs. And I have formal species governmental approval from 12 different civilizations. She paused for effect. I also have a petition signed by 4,317 students across 43 educational facilities demanding the continuation and expansion of integrated education programs. The silence in the classroom was deafening. Finally, the Nexarian Council representative spoke. This matter is far from resolved. The Separatist Council will challenge these findings. They're welcome to try, Captain Webb replied cheerfully. But they'll be doing it in front of a tribunal that includes student representatives, parent committees, and species ambassadors. Should be interesting. The council representatives left without another word. Grax trailing behind them, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. As the official visitors filed out, leaving only Luna, her students, and the friendly ambassadors, the classroom erupted in celebration. "Did we just overthrow the government?" asked Jex, his butterfly wings fluttering with excitement. "Not overthrow," Luna corrected with a grin. "We just reminded them who they work for." Ambassador Keth Prime approached her with something resembling respect. "Teacher Martinez, you have accomplished something remarkable here. You've turned a classroom management issue into a galactic political movement." Luna looked around at her students, all 37 of them, chattering excitedly in their various languages about legal rights and educational freedom. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "I just treated them like intelligent beings, capable of making their own decisions about their education." "Yes," Keth Prime said thoughtfully. "That's exactly what makes it remarkable." As the ambassadors departed and the extra students reluctantly returned to their own classes, Luna found herself alone with her original 23 pupils. "So," she said, settling into her chair, "who's ready to learn about ionic bonds?" The enthusiastic response nearly lifted the roof. Outside in the corridor, Director Thane Omega was updating her files on human teaching methods when Captain Webb approached. "Interesting day," Webb observed. "That's one way to put it," Thane Omega replied. "Your species has a talent for turning simple situations into complex political statements." Webb laughed. "Actually, I think we just have a talent for recognizing when simple situations are really complex problems in disguise." She paused, watching through the viewing panel as Luna began her chemistry lesson to a group of completely engaged alien students. "The Separatist Council isn't going away, you know. This victory will make them more determined, not less." "I know," Thane Omega said, "but they're fighting the wrong battle now. They're no longer fighting against human teachers. They're fighting against the students themselves." Through the viewing panel, they could see Luna demonstrating molecular structures, while Zenthari cubs, Morgani twins, and Kelleran younglings worked together on practice problems, their different natural abilities complementing each other perfectly. And, Thane Omega added with satisfaction, students who have learned to think for themselves are a lot harder to manipulate than students who've been taught to be afraid. Captain Webb smiled, showing her own predator teeth. "Now you're beginning to understand why humans make such good teachers." As she walked away, Thane Omega found herself looking forward to the next day's classes. For the first time in her career, she had the feeling that education was about to become very interesting indeed. In Classroom Delta 7, Luna Martinez continued teaching chemistry to alien students, completely unaware that she had just sparked a revolution. But then again, the best revolutions always started with someone raising their hand and asking a simple question.